Hello, I'm Jeff Kramer, the author of Infinite Resources, and I'm here with Roger Carlson, the author of the Saving the World Before
Mhm.
Breakfast series of books. And together we're saving the world before breakfast with infinite resources. And today we have a special guest, Ron Friedman. Ron is the author of the science fiction time travel alternate history novel Typhoon Time. And he also has some experience with Israeli intelligence, and I'll let him tell you a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can tell you if maybe no, it's probably not classified anymore, but I was in the Israeli Air Force intelligence in the late 1980s, early 1990s, the Gulf War time and all kind of conflict in Lebanon back then. Uh, that's my intelligence. And then I was in the reserve for about 12 years until I immigrated to Canada in the early 2000.
All right. And Roger, what will we be discussing tonight?
Tonight we talking about two wars have gotten into a tight fix. Essentially, it's uh, all the parties are backed into a corner for one reason or another. The Russo-Ukraine, the Ukrainians have managed to cut off supplies to Sevastopol and even some of the other areas in southern Ukraine, where the troops aren't getting their food and fuel and ammo. And so the Russians might try something desperate. We'll talk about that, possibilities, whatnot. Likewise, in Iran, the United States is slamming the Iranians because, hey, they're fighting to the death. They believe they're fighting for God, and like the Vikings, if they die in battle, they're going to be blessed. So they're not giving up for anything. And on the other hand, the United States, the president is coming up on an election, which he might lose if he's still stuck in this war. So the Iranians think that if they can hold out, and maybe it's true, if they can hold out, they can defeat him. So all sides are ready to try something new and tough. So we'll see what happens next.
Okay. So yeah, let's maybe start with the Ukraine-Russian war, and I'm really amazed. Now, of course, Ukraine has got support from many countries, but I'm really amazed at how innovative the Ukrainians have been using their drones, and they have, of course, short-range drones, long-range drones, small drones, huge flamingo drones that can carry, I think, about a 500 or 1,000 pound warhead.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been devastating Russia's supply lines, as you mentioned. I saw just the other day, I was watching Denis Davidov, and they sank or attacked and hit something like 18 ships in one day in the Sea of Azov.
Yeah.
So basically, Russia has stopped sending ships to reinforce their, like to supply their ports in the Sea of Azov, which, if you don't know the geography, that's the area between Crimea, Ukraine, and Russia. And that's a huge area where they're no longer able to send ships because they're clearly being targeted by Ukrainian drones. And then the Ukrainians have also been devastating just any truck on the road, on the highway that could be supplying. It doesn't matter what they're supplying. If they're a lorry, they they're being targeted with the drones. And then, of course, the attacks have been relentless on Russia's oil production and shadow fleet. So, pretty incredible job for a country that that is basically what less than a quarter of the population of, or well, certainly a fraction of the population of Russia,
I think
anyways.
a fourth is probably about a good rough
Yes. In land
combination,
mass a lot less, but in
comparison between the
population.
two.
Yeah. So, either of you can jump in here. Roger, maybe give your thoughts on that.
Okay, giving the background on it, again, it's an entirely new form of war, kind of like the advances of both World War One and World War Two, where the drones, both or not both, the triune, it's the trinity of drones in the air, drones in the water, and now drones on the ground is something that the Ukrainians have been advancing. And at the beginning of the war, it was believed, especially by the Russians, that special military operation, and within a week, troops will be marching the victory parade in downtown Kiev. It'll be the little Russians will be brought back to heel, and they'll be part of the new Soviet slash Tsarist empire going on again. But then slowly this drone revolution started doing things. And a country without a navy first chased the Russian Navy out of Sevastopol over to the east side of the Black Sea, and even attacking ports there. And now the Sea of Azov, which is right there, kind of a little like a halfway house between mainland Russia and the Black Sea, that was too far away to hit before. But now, with longer range drones, the Ukrainians suddenly are wiping things out. And part of the reason they were doing that is the drones were far enough to hit railroads, roads, bridges, and things going to Crimea. And just in the last week, the Russians were trying desperately to bring ferries and oil tankers and regular ships to bring supplies to Crimea. And like it was, as Jeff mentioned, like in one day it was like 18, but the total is more than 50. So it's like a huge hit, and they basically chased the Russian ships out. So the question gets to be, in this war, what do the Russians do now? Are they going to just keep chipping away and losing, or are they going to escalate somehow? So stay tuned. Maybe that'd be a good place for you to jump in, Ron, since
Yeah,
you
yeah. So
can't tell than us. We're just book readers.
yeah, I'll speculate. I'm not that well versed on the Ukrainian war as the Middle East, but if I go a little bit 50,000 feet view and then go into the weeds. So
Mm-hmm.
50,000 view, I think what we have is the change in the world order. The West, especially the US, they used to dominate the world and provide security for the entire world,
Mm-hmm.
are now pulling back. The West is becoming a little bit
Mm-hmm.
weaker
Mm-hmm.
and less able to project force. And other countries are trying to test the water, see if they can do something. And one of the catalysts that I believe uh, convince Putin that the war in Ukraine would be a good opportunity was the haste withdraw from Afghanistan. So during the not Obama, during the Biden administration, because
Mm-hmm.
it was run in a rush and people were hanging for the airplane and everybody left very, very quickly. And the Taliban was able to get like a few billions of equipment in a very
About
unorderly fashion.
$80 billion worth by some counts.
So Putin thought, yeah, the West is weak. Let's take the opportunity and invade Ukraine. That's what I think at least one of the reason. Uh, so if I go a little bit of what happened about last week or the last month, uh, so for the Ukraine, you're right, they were able to hit the shadow fleet of tankers and other ships in the Azov fleet. The Crimea is pretty much under siege right now. It's very difficult to give them any supply, oil, fuel, food. So they don't have enough right now. I think only the military is operating and civilian are not allowed to buy oil in the gas stations. There is damage to port, and there's also quite a lot of damage to oil and gas infrastructure, even deep into Russia,
Yeah,
because
more
the
than
drones right now have.
40%
So
down
that means
account.
Russia right now, because of the sanction by the West, the main supply, the main way to get money is by selling oil, mostly to China and a little bit also through the sea. But if all these oil refineries and oil fields are going to be bombed, That's going to severely cripple Russia's ability to finance the continuation of the war. Other front, in Ukraine, Russia right now is bombing civilian infrastructure. They fired, I think it was yesterday, uh, trying to read how many, like about 20 to 31 uh, strikes by missiles and about 50, no, maybe more drones. And I think 8 civilians were killed. So right now they're firing and trying to hit Ukraine without discrimination, even hitting cities and infrastructure. On the ground, the Russians are still advancing, but very, very slow. So it's basically come to a standstill, and maybe World War One style
Mhm.
trenches warfare. And anytime they gather a huge force is being struck by drones, but the Russians are still gaining ground physically on the ground.
If I can just comment on that, I think it's pretty much been equal gaining and losing ground. There were at least 2 months where the Ukrainians gained more ground than the Russians did in the last 4 months. So it's pretty much like you say, World War One kind of attrition battles, and I mean it's pretty incredible if you consider that Russia was considered the second strongest military force in the world. I don't know if they're still considered that or not, but I mean,
Maybe the
maybe
second most powerful in Ukraine.
Mhm. Yeah, still that powerful in nuclear,
yeah,
which is
certainly.
one of the
And
worries.
they have nuclear. No, I was telling a joke that it's the second most powerful in Ukraine.
In Ukraine.
Mhm.
But
Well, it used
yeah,
to
they
be in
still
the
have
world. Now it's just in
6,000. They still
Ukraine.
have nearly 6,000 nuclear
Mhm.
bomb.
Yeah.
And two other political development is one that the U.S. may give license to Ukraine to build Patriot missiles, but until production line will be available, it could take years. Because right now their air defense is hurting. That's why the Russians are able to
Yeah, they
bomb
can stop drones pretty
this.
well, but uh, ballistic missiles is much harder to do.
The yeah, the fire, yeah, Iskandar for S-400 missiles and
Mhm.
120 drones. And the second thing is that Germany is promised to Ukraine that going to finance the construction of 50,000 drones. So
Mhm.
A
Ukraine
50,000 what?
drones,
Oh, okay. So I'm presuming that's not just the small drones. That would be more like the flamingo type drones or something like that.
not sure.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is really innovative that the Ukrainians have done is they've set up a point systems for their military units, the drone operators, and the ones that are most successful basically can choose what hardware and what improvements they want to have. So it's almost like a video game situation where the better you are, the more you advance. And of course, the Ukrainians, I think that are the Ukrainians on the front lines are somewhat more motivated than the Russians soldiers, I think, because of course they're defending their country, they're defending their families, whereas a lot of the Russians are, have been either former prisoners or people rounded up from the streets. They're sending in people that are essentially crippled, having to walk with canes and stuff like this uh, to hold positions. It's rather embarrassing in terms of I've never heard of a military using people in that situation. Short of when the Russians were invading Berlin at the end of the Second World War, they had teenagers that were joining the Volksarmee and defending Berlin. But that was the most extreme situation in World War II for the Germans. Um, but sending people who have to use a cane to into combat is just pretty insane.
Maybe it could be in a guarding position.
As
Maybe to
far as I know, it's
sit
front
and fly at
lines.
one place and fire from a
Mm.
machine gun.
Mhm.
What I've seen is like video from drones, and it's they're coming in to take out the soldiers, and both the soldiers are walking with canes. So take that for whatever you want. But they don't, I didn't see the end, their demise or anything like that. But that was pretty much a given.
Yeah, one problem that we have in this war, and this is a problem for both sides, it's the fertility rate. So they don't, both the Russian and the Ukrainian don't have a lot of young people on the military age, like people in the late teen, early 20s. That's
Mhm.
most of people that are silly enough to charge against the machine, up the hill against the machine gun.
Yeah.
So those people, yeah, there are, uh, I think maybe 8 million of those in Russia, and I don't know, 300,000 left run away because they didn't want to be drafted. I don't know, 500,000 or more were killed.
Yeah.
So they are running out of young people, Russia.
What's interesting is there's
Probably
talk
also
of
Ukraine.
yeah, talk of Russia creating a general draft, and basically forcing young people to, well, not young people, but forcing people of military age to serve the country. And Russia is kind of interesting. Of course, everybody's got propaganda, but their propaganda machine is more tuned than most. And I saw some interviews of people on the street, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, we would support it." Now, interestingly enough, they were interviewing the elderly and women for the most part, not the men who would actually be going. But they did have one young man in that interview that I saw who seemed to be supportive of it. And Russian culture has a lot of respect for the World War II veterans who, fought for Mother or Father Russia. What is it? Yeah,
Motherland.
Mother Russia,
Usually.
Mother Russia. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
motherland.
uh, and so
I knew
they,
the word. Forgot it.
yeah, it was the German fatherland and Mother Russia, and it wasn't a good marriage apparently. So anyway, um, yeah, so it surprises me that well, again, we're probably not seeing the true feeling of the Russian people towards having a general draft, but
Yeah,
uh,
and Rudina. Rudina. That's how it's called in Russian.
Mhm.
yeah. So what are your thoughts on that, Roger?
It's yeah. There was again Francis Fukuyama. I think was the guy who said the end of history, and yeah, nothing much more was going to happen anymore. And the sad thing is, it's kind of a rerun. It's like another war across Eastern Europe, going on into Asia. Because there was a Lithuanian Empire, there was a Polish Empire, of course there was a Russian Empire, there was the Mongols, and of course the Russians have their ally China. But on the other hand, who would benefit the most from Russia falling apart? But their ally China, that could help keep things going in Siberia and maybe build a few factories here and there and put a few settlements in. And that's another, in the propaganda war against Russia, it's like, hey, your ally might not be your ally.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that all goes. But
What's interesting about that is most of the population of Siberia, like the Far East, is ethnic Chinese. And of course, during the Soviet era, there were tensions between China and Russia as well, where they actually had a short war
Mm.
between the two of them for a bit.
yeah,
And
a very ugly war, in fact.
so China, yeah, I mean, China would stand to benefit if Putin's, you know, it looks like at the best what he can get out of this war is a stalemate, and Ukraine will agree to a ceasefire, and the troops on the ground will stay in place or something like this. But at worst, Ukraine will be able to cut the supply lines and basically drive the Russians not only out of the captured territories in the Donbass, but also out of your Crimea. If that happens, then I think Putin's finished in Russia, and it may be even that the Russians will finish him themselves. If that happens, then of course Russia becomes politically unstable, and it may, I'm sure there are separatist movements in the Far East, or they could be antagonized by China or something like that. It could very well be that Russia might be a third of its size in 5 years from now if all of the different regions decide that they want to go their own way.
Mhm.
So, I mean, we're seeing a separatist movement in Alberta. So I can only imagine that there's separatist feelings in places that don't get treated as well as Moscow and Leningrad. So,
Mhm. Yeah, that was part of the ongoing thing. It's like the recruitment of soldiers was the most intense in all these places way back when. In passing, not all Chinese. There's Bashkirs, there's Uyghurs, there's hundreds of different ethnic groups that make up this. It was essentially
I think
an
Chechnya is
ancient
a backbone.
feudal connection.
yeah, yeah. I
Chechnya,
mean,
it's a Muslim region. It's actually they have a
Yeah.
high birth rate and they are
Mhm.
helping Putin.
Yeah.
they're currently helping Putin, but of course, when Putin first came to power, they were at war with Russia, and they were fighting for independence too. So, I could see those flames being fanned quite easily if Russia loses in Ukraine.
Yeah. Or Chechnya
Yeah,
might not be hostile to Russia, just a civil war within Chechnya. Like, what do you do with your ally? Has a civil war going on, and you're busy trying to put the Ukrainians down at the same time. So there's essentially like 25,000 Chechen troops who might be killing each other, and that would be like the Ukrainians are happy. Their goal is if there's this awful thing. If the casualty rate is more than like I think it's like 1,100 and some, then the Russian army is losing unless they do a mass conscription, which might happen. So, that's getting if they're up to 13 or 1,400, that's like 200 or 300 Russian army net negative. But if 25,000 effectives disappear, well, then they're getting a lot thinner in their troops. So
Yeah.
I guess
could be
the good
dangerous
news for
moment
Europe is
because
they've been bleeding troops or pulling troops off from places like Kaliningrad, the border of Finland, the border of the Baltic states, and so it's kind of like in World War II where the the Germans kept pulling troops from the south of France, and when that invasion came, boom, it
yeah,
was easy. It was so much easier than the Normandy invasion because they were going to try to take the port. Meanwhile, the armies were running north 20, 30, 50 miles a day, and a few of them circled back and said, "Hey, we've got the port." Boom. It's like
yeah. But
similar sort of thing.
they also pulled out troops from Syria, which is one of the reasons why the Assad regime fell
Mhm.
when they
Yeah,
come under pressure.
that's right. And
They
in
they
Central
basically yeah,
Africa, where they had an ally in with Burkina Faso or Mali, I forget which one.
Mali, yeah.
It was Mali.
But
They made a deal like, hey, let us out and you're in good shape. But the government they were supporting, those troops were left facing uh, the
yeah, it wasn't really
jihadis.
troops. It wasn't really troops. It was the like mercenaries.
Hmm.
Forgot the name of the group.
Hmm.
Yeah, the one where their leader
Yeah.
did a run to Moscow a few years ago and then ended up being shot down by a Russian missile.
Who was that? That got
The Russian mercenary group, where I can't
oh
remember the guy's name.
oh what's it?
Wagner.
Bogosian or
Yeah, the Wagner group. Yeah,
yeah, the guy that ran the Wagner group. Yeah, well, that was a sabotage. But apparently, a bomb was slipped on the plane, and he thought he would be negotiating, but no.
Yeah, so they were in Mali.
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Was
The
it
Wagner
Prigozhin?
group
Was that his
was
name?
the mercenaries all over the world, and I guess including Syria as
It
well.
was in
Hmm.
Yeah,
yeah, 2003.
yeah. So that's interesting. And the interesting tie-in between these two is that Iran was supplying Russia with a lot of Shahed drones, which they were then using to attack Ukraine. But that came pretty much to an abrupt halt when Israel and the United States attacked Iran back
Yeah,
in,
and
when was that, February?
also Iran was helping Assad stay, but because the Hezbollah started the war with Israel, it was pretty much smashed in Lebanon.
Yeah.
They degraded, so they were not able to help Assad. So take all the Russian troops from Latakia, you took them away, and Hezbollah became a lot weaker. Then nothing was left to protect Assad. So that's why his regime fell to the rebels, to Julani, and which was back then supported by Turkey.
So what do you think the situation is with Assad now? Like, I heard he went to Russia. Do you think he's still
Assad is in
alive?
Russia. He got a few billions out of the country and having a good life in Russia, I guess.
Hey,
Just
he
on a
kept
side
he's
note,
got a stack of gold in the closet, and so he's got a dacha somewhere. And if things get tight in Russia, he'll slip out and he'll end up in uh,
Yeah,
Uruguay or Spain or someplace.
most of the Russian population are living around Moscow and around
St. Petersburg.
Petrograd, St. Petersburg.
Yeah, the
So
Yeah,
two
this
big
is most of
cities.
Russia, more than 50% of Russia, these two cities. So they will stay. They will not separate.
I haven't heard anything from Edward Snowden lately. It's kind of interesting because he used to, well, when he first was exiled in Russia, he used to say nice things about Russia, and basically thanking them for allowing him to live there and stuff like that. I haven't heard anything from him recently, and I'm just wondering if he's just keeping his mouth shut and keeping his head low, or what's going on there.
I don't know.
I think
I didn't heard of him as well, but
he's still a rabble rouser, but the level of noise all around with you know, Strait of Hormuz and Black Sea fleets getting wiped out, and all these things happening between the wars, and is Trump going to annihilate Iran in a biblical fashion, or is he mad because Netanyahu bombed one refinery? How dare you? I can bomb refineries, but
Well, what I think is interesting about this, of course, the Iran war is ostensibly to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons.
yeah,
And Russia, of course, has the most nuclear weapons. But they have been saber rattling since the beginning of the war, saying, oh, well, we've got this red line. If you invade Russian territory, we will use our nukes. And of course, that happened, and they didn't use their nukes. They
no,
say
I think it was a threat for NATO, not a threat for Ukraine.
yeah. All right. Anyway,
the Ukrainians were going to fight even if they got nuked. Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
scared
the point
Britain.
is
Well,
the various Russian officials have made comments about the potential for using nukes and threatening it, but so far they haven't. And one of my understandings from different things that I've heard is that basically the United States, when Biden was in power, essentially said if you use nukes, and then they basically showed Putin an itinerary of every place he'd been in the last 2 weeks or something, and they basically said we will retaliate, but not through official channels, but so that might have been enough to keep him uh, from
Yeah,
using nukes till now.
but I think Russia, if it feel threatened, it may, because one of the last resorts, it may use nukes.
So one of the things that saved the world, I guess you could say, is at least two occasions where Russian soldiers were in a position where they had standing orders to use nuclear weapons, and they refused to do it. One of them was during the Cuban Missile Crisis, when there was an officer on a submarine, and basically two out of the three decision makers wanted to use nukes on the American fleet because they were afraid that they were going to be captured or something. And it was a submarine that was forced to surface. Um, and the commander said no, for whatever reason, he didn't think it was a situation where that called for nuclear war. And then there was another instance where there was a false radar signal, and the Russian radar operator was supposed to give the order to, basically launch a full nuclear strike from Russia because he saw this signal, and he was the only one.
Yeah, 5 missiles coming in.
Yeah,
And
he
he
was the
said,
only
wait a
one.
minute, 5 missiles, if they were going to attack, they would attack with more than 5 missiles. I think it might be
Exactly.
a mechanical problem or a
That's
telecommunication.
right, and so he used that logical assessment and didn't phone his superiors and launch a nuclear strike. And he ended up suffering for that because he didn't follow the standing orders, but he did manage to save the world in the process. And we can only hope that if Putin was to say, "Oh well, we're gonna wipe out Kiev and the other major Odessa and the other major Russian or Ukrainian
Kharkov,
cities," um, the thing
Kharkov,
is, I think if you launch any nuke,
Kursk.
they would basically do a strike against all of the NATO countries at the same time, because it doesn't make sense to take out your enemy in Ukraine. It would basically be a last ditch effort, and it would be try to strike all your enemies
Could be
first.
a small tactical nuke.
Yeah, and even small tactical nukes basically have been forbidden. So, uh, but we'll see. And really, what's the so tactical nukes? And I'm thinking of like the pictures that we saw, the American, tests in Nevada and stuff, and they have all these. They basically fire a nuke out of an artillery piece, and it causes all this devastation, and it's flying, beyond the speed of sound as it explodes, and all this sort of thing. And the idea there is it clears out a section of the battlefield so that your soldiers can go rushing in. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was a soldier, the last thing I want to do is go into an area that's just been nuked.
Well, they tested it in the 1950s and didn't tell the soldiers that it's contaminating with radiation.
Yeah, but
That
I think
smoky
even
test. So there were a lot of soldiers that participated in the exercise and later got cancer.
absolutely, and so it's not like Russia is ignorant of the possible
It was
results of
mentioned in the
radiation
book.
exposure. Yeah, I mean, we have the Chernobyl incident, which is right in Ukraine where they're fighting. So all of Russia is aware of the hazards of nuclear radiation.
And I heard story that you remember there was a big Russian column that came south and tried to reach Kiev.
Yeah,
Some of the soldiers parked in the area close to Chernobyl and also got
yeah,
sick
that's right.
because they
Do
were
you
not
know of
sure that it's
any?
Chernobyl.
Do you know of any negative effects from that? Because they ended up leaving there. Yeah, the exclusion zone. Of course, they left all of the columns that went in on the way to Kiev essentially retreated. But yeah, it was interesting because of course, the nuclear exclusion zone, they had free reign. There was no one there to prevent them from entering, and it brought them pretty close to Kiev.
Yeah.
Well,
So
that was another issue at the beginning was that the second greatest military power in the world wasn't nearly as great as they seemed to be, and their logistics were just awful. They didn't have enough fuel for the trucks and tanks, and there was guys hiking home after abandoning their trucks or their tanks,
yeah,
and
I
the
think they
Ukrainians
didn't.
farmers were pulling them away. It's like, hey, it's going to be in the Ukrainian army now.
yeah,
Yeah, it was they went on the road, and if you bomb the first tank or the first truck in the road, then it's blocked everything behind it.
yeah,
Yeah, that too. But even worse was that the tires had been in storage. Hey, we store these. Well, after 10 years, the rubber had rotted for one reason or another, and well, worth of spare tires. 100 kilometers back. Well,
right.
we're screwed.
Yeah, it's interesting to compare, Operation Barbarossa when the Germans invaded Russia. They'd planned it out fairly meticulously and they encircled all sorts of large army groups and stuff. And the Russian plan, I think, first of all, I think the FSB had given Putin a more optimistic picture of what was going on the ground. And Putin might have believed that the Russians were going to be hailed as victorious liberators, ousting Nazism from Ukraine or something. At least that's their official line.
Well, the
And
opposite corps believed that too.
I think they were very close to it. It's just that the Ukrainian decided to fight.
yeah,
They could have
yeah.
run away. Zelensky could have run away, and
Well, and that's right. He was
yeah.
invited to come to the U.S. when the invasion happened. He said, "No, I don't want to leave the country. I'd like to get support." So, yeah. So
You need a ride? I need ammo.
yeah, the Rush or the Ukrainian public response was pretty amazing. Building Molotov cocktail factories and in people's basements and stuff like this, and a lot of people enlisted because they probably figured, oh, it's going to be a short war, and I'll defend my country and all that sort of thing. So the first few days of the war were chaotic, and Ukraine has being a Russian, a former Soviet state, and having been under Russian influence for quite a long time, does have a fair bit of corruption in the system, and so there were those kinds of issues. The sabotage at the beginning of the war, basically the defenses on the Crimean side were called away from the border, so the Russians had free ability to walk in. So there was a lot of sabotage that was going on within the military ranks.
Oh yeah,
Are you talking about Crimea?
2014. That
Yeah,
was
Crimea.
Crimea were captured in 2014, not in
No, no,
2022.
but they basically Russia had amassed forces in Crimea, which invaded into Rostov and other areas,
later on.
and the defenders basically were called away, and there was no opposition to the Russians taking tremendous territory in the south.
Yeah.
Like,
And
for
Yeah.
instance,
Well, zooming back in time, in 2014, the commander of the Ukrainian forces told everybody to stand down, and then he became a general in the Russian army. Like, what a coincidence.
well, that doesn't seem corrupt at
In
all.
Norway, there was a name for that, Vidkun Quisling.
Quisling,
He was the
yes.
defense minister, and he arranged so that nobody noticed. The inspectors were called away for some other important task, and German freighters, on the morning of the invasion, troops were coming out of the freighters attacking things. It's exactly the thing that happened in 2014.
Yeah.
And the Ukrainians remembered it, just like the French remembered 1870 in 1914. It's like, that's not going to happen again. So they were ready to fight. Pickup trucks were out on the runway when if
Spetsnaz, the
the
special
runway
forces.
north on the big airport north of Kyiv hadn't been so heavily and forcefully defended, then the Russian army would have taken Kyiv, and the war might have been over. Zelensky might have been dead on day two, and that would be the end of it. Would have been the end of it.
Well, certainly some of the Ukrainian generals were heeding the intelligence that they were receiving from the CIA, because the Americans had been. I remember news reports about Russian buildup of forces in Belarus and on the borders leading up, and the Russian soldiers, most of them were just being told, "Oh, this is just an exercise, nothing to worry about," and that might have been, part of the logistical problem too, is that a lot of those units weren't prepared for battle. They were thinking they were on an exercise or something along those lines.
Yeah, they
But
packed their dress uniforms so they could be in the victory parade.
yeah, so lots of military blunders throughout there. Do we want to switch gears and start talking a little bit about Iran?
Yeah, maybe just talk about what is the end game. What do you think is the end game for Ukraine?
So I think that Zelensky has indicated that he's totally open to a ceasefire and the borders, not that the permanent borders would stay where they are, but that they would stop fighting and basically have like a demilitarized zone or something between the forces. Ukraine has not relinquished claim to Crimea or any of the other territories that Russia has taken. And so that would lead to negotiations for reparations and various other things. So I don't know if they will be successful in regaining all of their territory. Militarily, they are doing an amazing job of, uh, hitting the Russian economy. Like when you see, the lines of people waiting for gas and stuff like this along the highways. I don't know how long the Russian society could function without fuel supplies just for the population, let alone heating fuel as winter's coming. And if the populace doesn't can't carry on the war effort, then what's the army going to do if they can't get any fuel to the front either? So it's a serious situation for Russia. And I don't know if Putin is fully aware of how bad it is because, he's already sacked quite a few generals for telling him the truth.
Yeah,
And
those dangerous windows. Those windows kill more generals
yeah,
than the Ukrainian artillery.
they seem to have a desire to look out the windows and fall out somehow or another. Bad balance.
Yeah. But
Yes, I think the wait for Ukraine to win is also hurt the oil and gas infrastructure in Russia.
the best hope for Ukraine is that Putin is suffering from Lyndon Johnson syndrome, only carried further. Whereas Johnson would shout at people when they got bad reports about Vietnam, so the generals learned not to say bad things. So he thought he was winning in 1968 before the Tet Offensive. So likewise, if the Russians keep losing their tanker trucks, if they keep losing the tanker ships, and the troops eventually are hungry enough to where there's a major collapse in the Ukraine, then the Ukrainians will be in a stronger position. If it's not, when Putin looks at it, then it gets back to the 1960s thing, where people were seriously thinking, will there be a major nuclear war? And they keep saying, if you have a nuclear war, the whole world will turn against you. But if Putin is so far backed up, yeah, would he do it? Tactical, bunch of tactical nukes, maybe even some big nukes on Kiev and Kharkov and Kharkiv.
So doesn't that just completely defeat the whole purpose of it? Like, what kind of you talk about a Pyrrhic victory if you want to conquer a nation and you basically wipe out everything that you're conquering with a nuclear bomb? It's not like the Russian birth rate is so great that they're going to repopulate Kiev if they kill everyone there.
Well, that's living in a rational universe. But
fair enough. The thing is, I used to look before Putin started all this nonsense. I used to listen to his speeches, and I think, that guy's pretty bright, and I certainly don't think that he's a dummy. He might be getting some misinformation, or he might have some delusions of grandeur, but certainly he's a smart man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But as Adolf Hitler, who knew about such things, said, starting a war is like walking into a darkened room. He said that near the end of the war when he'd gotten a little smarter. So likewise, they're there. But another thing he said was, if there was a button I could push that would destroy the world, I might push it.
Yeah, that's creepy.
Putin has a red button that he can push to destroy the world.
It's that's one of the things I heard too. And if you think of Hitler in the bunker committing suicide, and if that's actually what happened, I mean, I put some stock in the idea that he actually escaped to Argentina. But the the thing is, if you have nothing to lose, you're going to die. You know you're going to die.
Hmm.
Well, in that situation, how many people would choose to take as many people with them as possible? You know, oh, the German people have failed me. I'm going to destroy the world. I mean, this is, yeah, it's creepy. Uh, just before Ron gives his bit here, I just want to say one other thing that I think could happen is if Ukraine continues their successful campaign, keeps the ships out of the Azov Sea, keeps the supplies from coming in, to the point where Russian soldiers are being depleted of ammunition, of drones and stuff. Eventually, the situation could get so bad that the tanks and things that Ukraine has been holding in reserve could do a breakthrough and conquer a tremendous area, unlike what happened when they tried that back in 2023, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
2023.
and they got repulsed really badly. But Ukraine still has, they've got an air force that's been donated to them, plus the stuff that they've managed to keep.
Hmm.
Their tanks haven't been as devastated as the Russian tanks have been on the front, as far as I know. And so they've still got reserves in the background that they can use that might be able to, once the drones in an area have been knocked out, they might be able to go in with these conventional weapons and actually root out the entrenched Russians. What do you think, Ron?
Yeah, I think the best way for Ukraine to achieve a victory is to destroy the oil facility and cause economic havoc to Russia, uh, which will prevent them to sustain the army and give them supplies. Uh,
And the Ukrainians do have another advantage in that the winds tend to blow from west to east. So if somebody nuked Ukraine, the fallout would fall on, not necessarily Moscow and St. Petersburg, but it's certainly a large area of Russia going all the way to the Urals and further back.
Yeah, that's of course the predominant winds. Sometimes the weather changes, and the Russians could choose to nuke them at some point when the winds are blowing towards Poland or something.
Yeah.
Um, the interesting thing that the Ukrainians have been doing to take advantage of that is they've been hanging drones from balloons and letting them float over Russia, and then taking control of them when they get close to a military target, and using that to attack. So that's kind of
and
an
shorten
interesting
range.
approach.
But how did they head radio signal reaching all the way to the drone?
Pardon me?
How did they head the radio signal that can reach the drones?
Oh, they have a Starlink unit or something on it.
I don't think Starlink.
Thank you, Elon Musk.
I don't think Starlink work behind the Russian border. It's only work on the Ukrainian side.
Yeah, I mean Starlink. Of course, the signal can be turned on or off wherever they want to, and it may well be that they could turn on the signal for a special operation or for a special unit or something like that. So there was of course a time when Russians were buying Starlink units and using them to get their information and control their weapons, until Elon Musk was made aware of it and basically said, "Oh well, we can shut that down." And essentially, I think what they had to do was send some sort of verification code saying, "Yeah, I'm Ukrainian." And if they weren't able to get that code, then some unit that was bought in Kazakhstan or someplace else where it was legal to use it couldn't be used near the Ukrainian frontier.
Yeah, and the Starlink is what made Spiderweb possible,
Mhm.
along with some very clever spy stuff. It was like that's a classic thing of the 20th century. One of the great special ops commando things. Thousands of miles across Russia, these little hobby drones with 20-kilogram payloads were dropping onto $200 million airplanes and such. So, yeah, again, the,
Yeah,
the
another brilliant
technology
innovation.
revolution happened.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
remember
no
they used
there's
track
no
to smuggle
rear
them close to the
there's no
airports.
military rear anymore.
Yeah. Well, and there have also been attacks of like Russian pipelines near the Chinese-Russian border, and you know, presumably the Ukrainians have some special behind the lines units that are carrying out those kinds of attacks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how far from the front Russia has protection for their major bridges and stuff, but it could be quite possible for a Ukrainian sleeper cell or something to go in and blow out a major bridge behind the lines. So, and of course they could do that with a few flamingos or something like that if those drones make it past the initial anti-aircraft systems. So,
But
Okay.
meanwhile,
Can move to Iran.
It all connects to the U.S. Iranian thing. So you have some not anything that you would be hunted down by Mossad for telling, but
No, I think when
but
I
what do you
I
think
was
about Iran going and they're using drones to hang on? They're still, a couple of days ago they dropped another tanker in the Straits of Hormuz.
yeah,
So
hitting even if you use a very primitive drone, it's not very difficult to hit a big oil tanker
no,
undefended.
yeah.
yeah, well, yeah, that's
Yeah.
another thing. It's like if you've got drones, you can do these things, but that leads to what's Lyndon Baines Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, and not to mention some Ayatollah who's running things now. What are they going to do in the next few weeks?
So let me just paint a little bit of the background picture here, because um, so what we've seen, of course, is after the October 7th attacks, Hamas started the war with Israel, and so Israel was preoccupied fighting in Gaza for a couple of years. But at the same time, Hezbollah was firing rockets from Lebanon, and the Assad regime was falling in Syria. So Syria's got the civil war that's been going on for decades or more, and of course the Syrian regime was hostile towards Israel for years, but because of the civil war, a lot of the military hardware and stuff was being depleted, fighting each other. And when the Assad regime fell, Israel basically had free reign, and they knocked out the anti-aircraft and air assets of the
And
Assad regime.
navy,
The Navy, they basically took out all of
all the
the
heavy
major,
equipment, yeah,
yeah, a lot of the
everything
fighting
bigger than a
equipment.
tank.
And so they rendered Syria essentially impotent to Israeli air forces. And then, of course, the Hamas was just recently has finally surrendered, and
Not
so
really, kind
yeah,
of.
okay. Well, I'll let you talk to it. I'm just trying to build the image. So the war in Gaza has been an awful thing, and carried on for quite a while. But of course, Israel had the upper hand pretty much the entire time, and they've also, the Lebanese had an agreement with Israel that they wouldn't allow Hezbollah within 40 kilometers of the border or something like that. Again, Ron, you can speak to this because I don't necessarily have all the facts. And Lebanon didn't honor that, and so Israel basically said, "Fine, we're going to go and root them out ourselves." And so there was that incursion. Then, of course, those groups are being supported by Iran. So I'm pretty sure that Netanyahu, sent a few diplomatic cables and whispered in nicely into Donald's ear and said, we can take out the Iranian leadership the same way that you took out, the Venezuelan leader, and it'll be a quick and clean operation, and they'll surrender in no time, and everything will be hunky dory. And Trump was like, "Oh, well, that sounds like a good solution." Now, this is me speculating, of course, because I don't know what was going on there, but you guys can give your opinion. And I believe that Trump was all in, saying, "Yeah, we want to get rid of the nukes," and even though he had attacked Iran the previous year and said, "Oh, we've destroyed all of the nuclear facilities and this sort of thing." He's like, "Okay, well, we'll go in and we'll use our F-35s and essentially take out as much military hardware as possible, bring the Iranians to their knees, and they won't have any choice to surrender to our demands and regime change." And so that's essentially the Israelis were successful in cutting off the head of the snake, as they say. But it turns out that the snake has many heads, and so the son of the Ayatollah took command, and now we've got a
Yeah, that
situation
one I'm
where,
not sure he did.
pardon me.
I'm not sure he did. He may be, I don't
Oh,
know.
you think he's still
But
alive? Yeah,
I think
I
the
don't know.
IRGC is
He may
taken
not be
took
alive.
command,
Yeah,
and
but
he is a puppet of some sort, if he's
yeah,
still
so
alive.
the Iranians it turns out did have a card to play after all of their air defenses were taken out, and that card, of course, was the control of the Strait of Hormuz, which their drones have no problem, hitting targets in the strait because oil tankers are pretty hard to miss. I mean, in terms of military targets, I should say. And the strait is small enough, distance-wise, that it's well within the range of the drones. But further, all of the surrounding nations, or at least most of the surrounding nations, had U.S. military bases, which made them legitimate targets for Iran to strike. None of these countries had been warned by the Americans that they were planning to start a war, so they were potentially caught off guard when Shaheeds were coming to their territory. And yeah, so it's turned into an ugly situation where a significant proportion, what is it, about 20% of the world's oil comes out of the Persian Gulf.
About,
Uh,
I think about 100 million barrels, about 20 million a day come from
yeah,
Hormuz.
and so they managed to shut down a significant portion of that. Now, in the meantime, Saudi Arabia has managed to ship out a lot of oil through their pipeline. What is it, about 80% of their production or something like
It
that?
could be. It's about 7 million. So out of the 20 million total oil that went out of the Hormuz, about 7 million go through the pipeline instead.
Yeah. And of course, the UAE is in the process of building their own pipeline to avoid the Strait of Hormuz as well. But that'll take time. And as Peter Zion likes to say, the a lot of these oil wells that have been shut in and production has stopped because there's no place for the oil to go. It might take months or years to get them restarted. So even if the strait was to open tomorrow and ships were to go back and forth, like we're talking at least a month to get empty tankers into the region and start taking oil out, and then it could be a very long time beyond that. The unfortunate thing about this whole situation is, basically the world is being held hostage because of the actions of Israel and the United States in
And
terms
Iran.
of energy, prices and this sort of thing. And there's nothing that they can do. And last I saw, Europe's oil stocks, they have a policy where they like to keep 90 days of oil reserves. And last I read, it was down to 23 days. So that was a day ago. So they're probably down a bit less than that now. So yeah, that's the situation as I read it and kind of the history. And despite the back and forth negotiations between the U.S. and Iran, they're still yelling at each other. It seems like the Iranians have some loose cannons in their military who are willing to ignore the commands from the top and attack tankers, even though they're ordered not to. So how is this situation going to be resolved? And that's
You said so many points I don't agree with, so let's
okay.
go
So,
back.
so please respond to the
Take a
Okay,
deep
points.
so
breath
first of
and
all,
start out.
first of all, we're talking about two different fronts, one in Lebanon, one in Iran, that Iran is trying to merge them together because Hezbollah is in Lebanon. So in Lebanon, if you look at the history, uh, I don't know how long we want to go back, but if you go back to October 7, 2023, on October 8, 2023, when Israel was busy with Gaza, the Hezbollah started to fire rockets at Israel as a solidarity with the Hamas. And for about a year, it was just an exchange until 2024, and then Israel decided to do a very intensive strikes against Hezbollah in Lebanon. And back then, Hezbollah was very, very powerful. It has 140,000 rockets aimed at Israel. It was become a bit weaker because they lost in Syria. They were bombed in Syria, and that okay. But before that, so Israel started to intensively hit Beirut, the Dahia neighborhood. That's the Hezbollah stronghold, and fire a lot of bomb and invaded southern Lebanon, some of the villages close to the border. Killed Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, for 20 some years. And Hezbollah suffered a lot of damage, a lot of. It started with the pager operation, if you remember
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, that's a brilliant
So,
operation.
so Hezbollah lost thousands of of fighters, a big percentage of the missile capability. They lost the villages at the front line. They lost the leaders and a few other leaders and commanders, and they become severely weakened. And this is one of the reasons that the Assad regime later collapsed because Hezbollah was helping Assad in Lebanon, in Syria, and Russia was helping. Russia had to go to send their troops to Ukraine, and Hezbollah lost I don't know how many thousands of fighters back then. So they decided to withdraw from Syria, and that was the end of Assad, more or less.
Mhm.
The war with Iran, there was a war in 2024, not war, there were a few exchange of missiles. It started with I don't know what was the trigger. Israel hit a Hamas commander in Syria or in Lebanon that was very close to the Iranian consulate. They saw that like attacking on Iran, so they
Mhm.
decided to fire a barrage
Mhm.
against Israel. Israel attacked back. There were a few exchanges. Last year, 2025, we had the 12 days war. It was mostly air exchange. Uh, Israel was able to go to by itself to Iran through Syria that by then didn't have any air defense, and also it suppressed air defense in Iraq. And through there go to Iran and pretty much got air superiority in Western Iran and Tehran and bomb a lot of the facilities. They were not allowed to hit oil facilities, but a lot of the air defense missile facility and the nuclear facility, except for the one in Prodo that was deep underground. And like Trump bought the
The
B2
B2s. Yeah.
with the not the Moab, like the Moab, the 20-ton bombs that bunker
Yeah.
buster that
The bunker
Mother of all
busters.
bombs, the Moab.
it's not a
I don't
Moab.
think it was the Moab actually. It
But
was like a
something very
deep
similar.
penetrating one. Yeah. Kind of like the old tall boys from World War II, but much more
So that
advanced.
caused quite a lot of damage uh, to the Iranian nuclear facility, but it's they still have the very high motivation to build nukes. They already have uranium that was enriched to 60%, which is very close to nuclear. You can even build a bomb with 60% enriched uranium-235, but it's going to be a much bigger bomb. But if you could take the 60% and enrich it to 90%, then you have regular nuclear bomb that could be placed on missiles.
Mhm.
They build a huge missile core, about 3,000 ballistic missiles and a large drone fleet. And they were planning to have something like 10,000 ballistic missiles. As an example, like the UK and France has 50 or 60 ballistic missiles
Hmm.
compared to Iran that had 3,000. So that's very huge force combined with Hezbollah.
Hmm. So they're
Israel
playing, they're
saw that,
doing the long game,
yeah.
thousands of missiles
And
rather
I
than
remember
tens of
like
missiles.
Khomeini, like the previous leader, the
Mhm.
interviewers come to interview him and ask him, "Hey, what do you do first thing in the morning?" And he was expecting to hear I'm going to make coffee or make breakfast, and I'm thinking how to destroy the Zionist entity. So that's a completely nutcase. Uh, so
I
letting
mean,
them
it's not
have,
funny that he said that, but it's funny that this is the first thing I think about in the morning. Yeah. Wow.
yeah, so they are religious fanatics. They belief system. I'm not. I'm more familiar with the Islamic Brotherhood, the Sunni version, like Al Qaeda, Hamas, and that. But the Iranian, from what I gather, they believe something about the hidden Imam, the
Yep.
Mahdi, is supposed to come back. And when he come back, in order for him to come back, there needs to be chaos. And they believe they have to destroy Israel, possibly also the US. I don't know if destroy, but they do call, say, death to America and call America the big Satan.
Yeah.
So they are very, very little religious fanatics.
So the big Satan, Satan means the adversary, right? So big
No,
adversary.
yeah,
I
that's the
mean,
guy that run hell.
Not just
yeah,
the
yeah. I mean, so
adversary, but an evil
yeah,
adversary who
devil,
must
devil.
be
Yeah.
destroyed.
Yeah, so
Totally.
in January this year, we had an uprising in Iran. A lot of Iranians try to take off the regime because they have enough, and they are really fanatics regime, and
Mhm.
they are pretty corrupt, like the mafia, and they control big of Iran. So a lot of Iranian, I don't know if it's 50% or 90%. I heard different versions, but a lot of people wanted to out this regime, so they start protesting in the streets, and the regime killed a few tens of thousands. Most number that the AI agrees 35,000 or 36. Some people, Trump said above 40,000. We don't know, but it's probably a few tens of thousand and maybe even 50,000, but likely
Mhm.
less than 50,000. So back then, probably Israel and maybe the US figure out this will be a good opportunity to try to take out the regime in the hope that it will, if the regime will be weakened, the IRGC will be bombed, then the Iranian people will, at least they thought that there's going to be a chance, 20%, 30%, a chance worth taking that maybe the Iranian regime is going to collapse and they're going to be uprising and bring back the Shah. So the IRGC, they view the war as the end of days war, the good versus evil. That's like you have to fight to the death to destroy Satan. You don't give anything back. And the American saw this is, oh, let's do a quick win, similar to Venezuela. But if the gas price at the pump will go by $1.50, that's very, very bad. And we have to think about the midterm. So we have Iranians that are not all the Iranian, but at least the IRGC, the more fanatics. They are fighting
Mhm.
the biggest, the war to the end of time. They are very, very committed. And the American very uncommitted, but superior military. So the initial stage of the war, military-wise, was very successful to the American and the Israelis. Like all the most of the airplanes were destroyed. Most of the air defense, a lot of the facilities, the factories that make the ballistic missile, some percentage of the missiles, I don't know, maybe 30%, maybe 50%. The big
And the Navy
underground,
was completely sunk. Yeah.
the big ship were completely sunk. They still have small boats left. All the submarines, all the everything that was bigger than a small yacht was destroyed, like 30 something boats. So military, it was pretty successful to, and the military, the nuclear facility were bombed again because the Iranians start to construct some of them. So now we have the situation that the Iranian managed not to surrender. Their leadership was destroyed, even second tier. And I heard now two theories. One from very patriotic Israeli that are see it in a very rosy lights and more negative. Those who see it in the rosy lights, they say, yes, the Iranian regime was replaced. The people who are in power right now, we're talking about the president who is more moderate, and the speaker of the parliament. They agreed to the Trump to have a deal with Trump to open the Hormuz. and they will unfreeze some assets. Trump was even talking about $300 billion to rebuild Iran, but it's pretty theoretical. It's an MOU. I don't think if he planned to stand by it or not. But a few tens of billions of dollars were supposed to be unfreezed, and they believe, yeah, it's a new regime. They are more open. But you have the fanatics. They okay, the first off, they have the religious fanaticism that they have, and on the other hand, they want money. They want the money. They decided now that they want to control the Hormuz Straits and try to get money from each ship that leave. I believe something like $1 million, and that got uh, agreement with Oman, so they can collect. I don't know, let's say 100 ships a day. That's $100 million a day. It could end up quite a lot of money. And the Iranian, well, the Iranian that did the negotiate and agreed to, yeah, we are not going to do that, at least for the 60 days of the moratorium and part of the MOU, but later we can discuss. But the fanatics, right after the funeral of Khamenei, decided to attack because they want to get the money and they don't, and also they are not entirely under the control of the leadership that was in discussion with Trump. So it's, how do you say, it's pretty messy right now. The US want to do everything it can to get out of the war, but not allowing Iran to collect money from Hormuz. Iran, on the other hand, at least the regime, are very, very fanatics. They are already started to restore the nuclear facilities, which basically mean in about a year there's going to be another war. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe
Well,
it will be a new after November.
as we were discussing online earlier today, basically the actions of Israel and the United States have put Iran into a situation where the only viable defense they have from another similar cut off the head kind of attack would be to develop nuclear weapons as a deterrent.
Oh,
I
they
mean,
wanted nuclear deterrent all the time.
yeah.
They were agreed to delay it with the Obama deal, which I think was pretty bad deal, and he didn't really understand how the Middle East work. So they agreed to delay by a few years the nuclear development in exchange for billions of dollars,
Yeah,
which allow
pallets
them
of
to
cash delivered by airplane.
that which allow them two things. One, create a network of proxy that allow them to take control of Syria and Lebanon and Yemen, and now in part of they involved in Sudan and in Iraq to finance all the Shia militia over there. And the Hezbollah was pretty quite a lot of power. As I said, they had 140,000 at the peak. They had 140,000 rockets aimed at Israel. And on the other hand, they had developed their own nuclear ballistics missiles core. They had missile we know that can reach 4,000 kilometers. They said that they have nothing above 2,000, but they reach the area of Diego Garcia. So we know they have 4,000, and going from 4,000 to 10,000 could be something like another 6 months or a year to develop longer range missile, and those can reach North America. I don't know how far they were with
Mhm.
it. The agreement with Obama was until 2030. After the deal was canceled, they started to enrich uranium to 60%, which is they could say, yeah, we're not developing nuclear weapon, but we are developing the ability to make nuclear weapon very quickly if we decide to. So that's pretty close to having nuclear weapons. If I go in other countries in history, you know that Saddam Hussein was trying to develop nuclear weapon. Israel bomb it in I think it's 1982. Everybody were angry at Israel. Ronald Reagan put sanction on Israel and stop selling airplanes to Israel because were upset. Now everybody say thank you that Iraq don't have nukes.
Mhm.
Syria started to develop nuclear weapon, and Israel bombed the nuclear facilities in 2007. And Syria don't have nuclear weapon. Unfortunately for the world, Israel is not in East Asia.
Mhm.
So when North Korea decided to develop weapon, nobody bombed them. The Americans were, I don't know if I would say afraid or didn't have the balls, didn't have the guts to bomb North Korea. So now North Korea have weapons.
Right.
Uh,
Mhm.
so I think if Iran every time will get close to weapon, and I think it's going to happen in something like 1 year, Israel will attack with or without the US.
So
Because
let me paint a potential nightmare scenario. We got Russia and Iran both have a land border. They're both friendly towards each other. They've helped each other in the war. The Russians gave Iran military information on location of U.S. military bases
I
and
don't think they have a
assets.
land border.
Well,
The
across the
Soviet
Caspian
Union.
Sea. Sorry, they
Yeah, so they have to cross. Yeah, the Caspian Sea fleet, by the way, was also bombed.
right. But anyways. So the nightmare scenario is Iran provides something to Russia, and Russia says, you know what? You've been trying to get nuclear weapons for quite a while. Why don't we sell you a few? And that is entirely possible. I mean, the United States has nuclear weapons based on European soil in various countries over the years.
Turkey.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean
Part of the
that.
Cuban Missile Crisis,
Well, yeah, exactly.
negotiation about the Turkish missile.
Yeah, I mean, and eventually Kennedy withdrew them as part of the deal to get Khrushchev to back down. But I mean, it's entirely possible that Russia could be sympathetic to the Iranians. Now, the question is, why haven't they done that so far? Well, of course they're probably afraid to let the nuclear genie out of the bottle too, and they probably don't trust the Iranian fanatics any further than we do. But they're willing to work with them when their motives are aligned or the vision is aligned. So yeah, we'll happily exchange technology and anti-aircraft missiles for Shahed drones or whatever the case might be. But I mean, there's a lot of potential with these wars, especially since Russia and Iran don't have a lot of military options at this point now, and the end game that we're talking about, both Ukraine and Iran. So if Ukraine is successful and able to repulse the Russian attack, that's going to make Russia pretty angry. I don't know what they'll do. The only way I can see, like the Iran war ending, is if there's actual boots put on the ground, and maybe after the midterms, maybe that's what Trump is going to do. He's going to say, we have no other choice but to take out this regime once and for all, and we're going to mobilize the American people and do that. Now, I'm saying that's extreme. That's
I
a lot of
don't see it happen.
speculation.
Yeah, there is another
I
option.
don't see that happen. Boots on the ground.
Yeah,
I can see
there
air
is an
campaign
option
being.
to do it. Hillary Clinton and Jake Sullivan had an option for Libya. They essentially made Libya into a failed state. There were civil wars and things going on. So, likewise, the Kurdish forces are now attacking
Yeah.
in the northwest part of
So
Iran.
the Kurdish,
And
yeah,
there's Baluchis who all they need is some more automatic weapons, RPGs, maybe a little air support,
drones.
and they can take out those things. There's other groups within Iran because Iran is
Yeah,
one of the ancient empires. There's a number of different ethnic groups in there.
yeah. The
And
Persian are
likewise,
just over
when they
50%.
Libyanized Libya, it never came back. There's still a low-grade civil war going on there. And that's the only thing short of nuclear weapons that will stop the mullahs from doing things.
So, like in at the beginning of this war, I know the Kurds were not particularly keen
No,
to
it's not
attack the
exactly.
Iranians.
J.D. Vance was not particularly keen that the Kurds will start a rebellion against the IRGC.
Well,
So
also,
Israel, I think Israel wanted to arm the Kurds and help them start an uprising in the what's the name? I forgot the name of the mountain, the mountain range in northwest Iraq.
We wouldn't know the name of it anyway. But anyway, it's
But
northwest
I
Iraq.
think now there has been a number of attacks. Then there is some level of uprising and all the Kurdish fraction united right now.
so
Uh,
so this
uh,
might be the war where Kurdistan comes out.
so
Yeah, the Kurds as well.
Turkey, I think Vance objected to it because Turkey objected to it. Turkey don't want the Kurds to have independence anywhere because the big chunk of Kurdistan is in Turkey and they don't want to lose any part of Turkish Kurdistan. So that's why they oppose a Kurdish state in Syria and Iraq and Iran.
Mhm.
Uh, Israel is motivated to help the Kurds.
Yeah.
There are other minority groups. There are Azars in Iran and Arabs and Baluchis
Mhm.
near the area of Afghanistan and Pakistan.
Mhm.
Uh, so I don't know what is the plan. I see the war being renewed in a few months or maybe a year.
So we can expect oil prices. And one thing that I've commented in other places about is, I'm shocked that the price of oil, when I last checked, was about $75 a barrel, given that global reserves are being depleted, and given that, despite several announcements of ceasefires, nothing's been able to hold.
Mhm.
So that's surprising to me. And
So
the
I think
mountains that
that
you're talking about are the Caucasus and the
Zagreb,
Lesser
Zagreb, no,
Caucasus.
no, not Caucasus. I think Zagreb or something like
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, the that area is very mountainous in the north,
that. Yeah.
and the Armenians are one of the, or not the Armenians, the Kurds are one of the few ethnic groups that don't have a homeland, similar to Israel's situation before their independence, and their population is spread between Turkey, Iraq, and Iran.
And Syria.
So,
Syria.
and Syria, yeah. So it's if as a result of this they are able to get their own state in what is currently Persia, that would probably make Turkey and Iraq unhappy.
They pretty much have independence, not independence, but autonomy in Iraq and in Syria.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah,
but
you
not
know
in
better
Iraq.
than about it than I do, but
Yeah,
like I said,
the Kurds were allies of the US when the US was fighting ISIS.
right, and I know that they also helped during the Iraq War. So they were considered like allies to the United States during the invasion. Um, and there were hopes among the Kurds at that time that they would get their own homeland at that point, but that didn't happen, of course.
Yeah, so I think the US stopped any the Kurdish uprising because they were afraid to antagonize Turkey. But right now, I know there is some uprising in the Kurdistan area in Iran, and probably it's going occasional strikes and occasional like airstrikes and some exchanges. Hezbollah today is a lot weaker. Syria is no longer there. The Houthis in Yemen are still around.
Yeah.
Uh, I heard the militias in Iraq are starting to be disbanded right now because
So
Iran don't. Right now, Iran don't have the money to support all these proxy groups.
so over the last few years, Israel's position in the region has grown significantly stronger in having eliminated a lot of the opposition. that they faced previously. So from their perspective, this has all been, I think, good.
The Israelis are not happy with the amount of concession Trump was giving to Iran.
I wouldn't. I don't think many Americans were happy with it either.
But Trump was kind of desperate to end it to win the midterm.
Yeah.
But and if the Iranian was a bit smarter, they would take the deal. And some of the leaders took the deal. But some of the more fanatic elements decided to break to start fire on ships. And
So,
The problem with
given
Trump is that he might be replaced by the next Barack Obama administration, and Obama is probably a Shiite. That's why he sent all the money there.
so, in your opinion, do you think that there are enough groups like the Kurds who have, decent contacts, say through the CIA or something, who can um, start up uprisings throughout Iran and essentially overthrow
no,
the?
no, but only in their region.
Yeah.
They cannot start an uprising in Tehran, in the capital. So that area is the Farsi, Persian are the majority over there. I think you're on mute. Something happened to you.
Yeah, I was talking to my son.
So I don't know how it's going to evolve, but it will take time. But I think the best thing is regime change at this point.
Yeah,
Trump
if
said
you can. Yeah.
I think the
Trump said
best
that
is
it is
what?
a regime change, but it's not a complete regime change.
Oh, okay.
But probably not with the new Shah. He's not charismatic enough to be a leader, so it has to be some element from within the regime, similar to what happened in Venezuela. So
Mhm.
some element within the regime that are more cooperative, and I heard some people believe that
Mhm.
the US found those people,
Yeah.
but evidently those people are not controlling the all of the IRGC.
What do you think of the thought of having the Shah in exile, the heir apparent, going back there? Do you think the Iranians would actually accept a foreign leader imposed on them?
All the Iranian outside, or not all, but that's 90% of the Iranian outside Iran support it. A lot of the people that in the protest that were killed, so a lot of them are now dead. I think about 1 million were protest, 30,000 or 40,000 were killed, but probably the one who were killed or the most hardliner, they wanted the Shah.
Mhm.
But he's not charismatic enough. He doesn't have support of generals in the Iranian army. So he probably would be a very weak leader. So what the US is looking for is somebody from within the existing regime who has power to take control over Iran, but agree to US terms. And there is a chance that they were kind of successful in that. That will remain to be seen. And I think Jeff is frozen.
And we shall see what happens in another couple months.
Yeah, so there is a chance the war will be renewed
Mhm.
after the midterm, or there is a chance the US decided to leave the Middle East or be less active in the Middle East. And then when the Iranians are again closer to a nuclear weapon, I think Israel will attack. Israel also have a big problem right now in the US. A lot of the public are turning against Israel.
Mhm.
So I know that in the 1960s, the closest allies of Israel was France. And then at some point, the France decided, okay, after the Algeria war was over, they decided we will stop supplying Israel, we will put an embargo on Israel, and Israel stayed with no weapon supplier. So it started to develop the local industry until at some point, a couple of years later, in 68, the US started to supply Israel with weapons. So if that happened, Israel probably will have to get closer to other countries, maybe India,
Find new friends.
by your friends. But on the upside, when it comes to the war with Iran, there will be no restriction to attack their energy infrastructure, the oil facilities. And I don't know, they're going to say, if you attack our oil facility, we'll attack Saudi Arabia. Okay. I don't think Israel cares
Might
much.
happen. And that's something we would give credit to Trump because he had the Abraham Accords where, yeah, the Saudis said, hey, wait a minute, 1,000 years ago, we, the caliphs connected with different things. We had Christians, we had pagans, we had, of course, we in the Sunni world, and we got along pretty well, and we were prosperous. So hopefully that would be it. And meanwhile,
Yeah.
to get
Yeah,
the final word, I think we lost our electronic connection with Jeff.
yeah.
he froze and then disappeared.
Yeah, so we can talk for a few more minutes and then end the conversation. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so
If he doesn't show up in a couple of minutes, we might. There he comes. We were worried about you. You disappeared. Welcome
I
back.
think we're having a series of storms blow by, so I think that lightning must have struck nearby, and we
yeah, so
I got cut off. But yeah, that's about how long it takes me to boot. It was just an instantaneous flash. And my UPS apparently didn't handle it very well, so here we are. Anyway,
it's
I
probably
think
audio PS.
I'm right about in time to say goodnight, aren't I?
Yeah,
Do, is it about time for final remarks then?
yeah. I guess I could start with as I was talking with Ron and say we're kind of wondering what's going on. There's things are in the air in Iran, U.S. and Russo-Ukraine, and the drones are there everywhere. We'll see what happens. The other side might change throw the table over, come up with something new. So we shall see. And so the rest for the other two of you, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I'll talk
Uh,
about oil. Oil. We
Mm-hmm.
see stress on oil going in two places, one in the Hormuz Straits and another one in Russia. It's maybe connected because I know that
Yeah.
Ukrainians are hitting a lot of Russian. So that's gonna reduce the global oil supply. But on the other side, I see that the world is handling it pretty well. Like before the war, I think price of oil was about $70 for barrel, and it went at it peaked to about 120, but now it's like 75, 80. I know the US in Saudi Arabia, about one third of the all oil that went to the Persian Gulf is
Mm-hmm.
now going, Saudi Arabia is able to divert it. I'm sure Iraq is probably diverting some because there are pipelines that go through Turkey and stuff. US, I think, increased oil production. I think it was exporting before the war something like 5 million barrels a day. Now it's about 8 million.
Mm-hmm.
So the US is doing a good catching. Canada increased production by 140,000 barrels
Mm-hmm.
with existing infrastructure, and there are a few pipelines on the line, one to British that will supply to the west and potentially to the east, and probably there is another one will go to the south. Other oil producer, Venezuela now, their sanctions are over, so they are probably increasing. I haven't checked, but I'm sure Venezuela increasing production. Nigeria is increasing production. So there is less output right now than from before the war, but probably not by much.
yeah.
And there are also people are using less oil and using I don't know, more electric cars. I think right now almost 50% of the new cars are electric. Airplanes still use jet fuel, so they will stay with oil.
Yeah. In some countries, like Norway, has a lot of electric vehicles because the government's subsidizing, but about 50% of new vehicles in China are electric. And I think they see the writing on the wall in terms of fossil fuel transition, and they want to wean themselves off of fossil fuels in the same way that the Europeans would like to, because they don't produce enough locally. So if they can
Mm.
transfer to other energy sources, all the better.
Well, coal
As
is a
far
big one. It's coal-fired electricity. That's the major part of China.
Well, in World War II, they used to take coal and made it into synthetic oil
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
to run tanks
Um,
and airplanes.
Yeah, so certainly the oil, like you said, Ron, affects both of these wars. As far as an end game, I don't know that there is an end game that the United States has planned for this. I hope that they don't end up sending troops over there, and that they're able to get uprisings, local uprisings, like we were discussing. That would be the best outcome, and maybe we'll see a Kurdistan come out of this. In the Ukraine war, I think, Russia has been taking the bulk of the punishment for the last few months in terms of their infrastructure, oil infrastructure. And just like as the Allies destroyed, the access to oil to the Germans during the Second World War, despite, as Ron mentioned, the synthetic fuel that they were making from coal.
Oh, they also bombed the synthetic factories.
Yeah, but they also took out like the Romanian oil
Yeah,
fields and
Plasti, yeah,
everything.
the one in
Yeah,
Plasti. So the initial part of the war, they got most of the oil from Romania, and later it was synthetic oil, but that these factories were bombed as well.
yeah. But the Russian economy is very dependent. Well, I mean, all modern nations are dependent on inexpensive energy to operate their industries and for transportation. And if Ukraine is successful, as they already wiped out 40% of the oil capacity or the gasoline production capacity, I guess you could say, fuel capacity of Russia, if they can continue that and bring Russia to its economic knees, then Russia can't really prosecute the war effectively, and that will give the Ukrainians the ability to recapture their territory. And who knows what will happen in that case, given that I don't think Putin would be very happy with that. And yeah, everything's up in the air. So I think the world is in a very dangerous situation right now. The two historical superpowers of the world are involved with wars, and essentially on opposite sides. So this is not a good situation for. It's a very dangerous, unstable situation, I guess, and we have no idea how it might escalate, especially with leaders like Putin, who is unpredictable, and Donald Trump, quite frankly, I think is also unpredictable. So here we are.
Yeah, and the third part is China.
China, I think, is sitting on the sidelines. Apart from having lost access to oil, they are doing quite well from all of this. The Europeans and the Canadians and others have been negotiating deals with them in relation to the United States charging tariffs on everyone. So they have not been looking too badly. Now, what they could do to screw everything up would be to attack Taiwan,
Taiwan.
and if they do that, then everything's gone to hell. So it's like, that would be, I don't
Yeah,
know.
so
All
I heard
three,
yeah, I heard some
That's a good
analysis that the US is trying to pull out of Europe and focus
yes.
on Asia,
Well,
mostly
basically,
because
that's
of
what Hegseth has announced. He said, if there is a war in Europe, we will not be able to support NATO because we're focusing on Asia. So, I mean,
yeah, that's
it,
where all the chip production and except for ASML and
yeah, yeah. So
so
it's
I
very
think they will
critical.
protect the ASML.
Well, I mean, if China was actually making headway into being able to take over Taiwan, you can be guaranteed that TSMC would not exist. They would be destroyed in one form or another, except for their American subsidiary. Uh,
No, but
I
if Russia or somebody attack Europe, ASML in Holland is also critical for
I
all the
I look at how much
infrastructure.
trouble Russia has in Ukraine. I can't foresee any situation where they would take over Europe, especially since what they're even their historical what T-50 like the T-72 tanks and stuff. They've all been depleted to the point where how in the world would they be able to march across Europe? I think Poland's probably got a big enough army to stop them. So
Poland has about 1,000 tanks, but most of the Western Europe are really pathetic. Germany like has 400 tanks. I don't know. In
well,
World War II, they had tens of thousands.
of course, but that's for
400.
historical reasons because they didn't want to be threatening to their neighbors and such.
No, but
Um,
even France and Britain, uh, probably the strongest European country now, other than Russia and Ukraine, is Turkey. Greece has a little bit, Poland has a
right.
little bit, but Western Europe is. I know that now want to increase budget. I know that Germany is doubling its military budget. They had a pretty big army during the Cold War, and
Yeah.
they shrank it.
Well, one thing we didn't get to during all of this, and it was that the fact that Israel and the United States leadership acted unilaterally without consulting any of the NATO allies, and so pretty much all of the historic allies of the United States have washed their hands of the war in Iran. Although several of them, including Canada, have said they would be willing to participate in like peacekeeping operations after the war is over. But yeah, it's quite a mess. Um, anyway, so my conclusion is I don't see any easy way out of this, and I sure hope that we don't end up, you know, wiping out humanity with nuclear weapons as the final scene draws out.
Yeah, that 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 fear off in the distance, that coming back to the 1960s, where they thought, because they were closer to World War II, where nuclear weapons were used and so on. So it is a fear that comes up, and I guess the conclusion to all this is we just don't know, but here we had some good thoughts on it, and we now have about a 2 hour, pushing 2 hours here. I think we covered a few things on it, and so we got the three of us on this issue. And hey, if you want to put your actually, it'd be good to find out from you where you file your stuff, if you put on your website and stuff, or on and so on.
Yeah, well, I think mostly it's best if I put a link in Twitter.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
That's
and
where I have
then
most. I finally started to earn money from Twitter.
Oh, good on you.
all right, monsterized. Okay,
Not
and
a
two
lot.
months
I
from
got
now we can
like
come back and
$47. $47. I got
we'll
66 Canadian dollar.
yeah, in 2 months from now we'll say, we were worried about this and nothing came of it, or dang, I hope I've got enough canned goods to put in
Oh
while
no,
I'm cooking
I think we
out
are
that
going
fire in the
to.
backyard.
Yeah, I think we are. Yeah, there will be prolonged wars,
Yeah, quite likely.
but I think the world will be fine. Okay.
Mhm.
So they
Well,
increased oil production in other places and
Yeah.
slowly switched away from oil.
We've gone
yeah,
through a lot of things before,
Yeah.
so
So
hopefully we'll keep that.
surprisingly, Hormuz has been closed for, I think, since late February. So that's like a March, April, May, June, part of July, like 4.5 months. And I don't know. It doesn't look like a huge impact.
Mhm.
I wonder about countries like New Zealand and Australia, which I think they get their primary source of oil from that area, even though Australia does produce a significant natural gas and some oil. But yeah, New Zealand it doesn't have it, and I wonder if because the wealthier nations can afford to pay a higher price, if that means that oil from Nigeria, instead of supplying the local economy, is being primarily directed to Europe. So that means that developing nations don't have as much access to oil
It's
as
not
they
even
do.
high price because it's instead of $70, it's $75 a barrel.
Right. But what I mean is, if so, I think the price has been low because there have been these announcements of, oh, we've come to a ceasefire, so the end is in sight. But the fact is, the end isn't in sight. And even if it ended today, we still got potentially months of before stuff gets back to so-called normal. In which case, those oil reserves of 23 days in Europe will be depleted. That means, you might not be able to fly back from a trip to France or something.
Okay, so I better fly through Dubai, right?
And Nigerians and Angolans and Texans and Albertans will be doing better.
Well,
Yeah, Alberta don't have deficit anymore.
yeah, we were going to run like what was it, an $8 billion deficit? That's pretty much been written off.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah, and we better build this pipeline faster.
actually,
Not
Israel
10 years.
finally came up with was it gas deposits off in the Mediterranean after looking for decades. Like, hey, nothing, and then they found a bunch, which Biden promptly put the kibosh on. But with Biden gone, they can develop the fields. Was it oil or gas?
No, natural gas.
yeah. Yeah, so
And
there's
it's
a
kind of,
natural gas field basically between Egypt, Gaza, and Israel, right? Like
and
that
Lebanon
whole,
and Cyprus.
Yeah,
yeah.
and out into the Mediterranean, like in the Gulf of America, well, Mexico, whatever.
Yeah, but it's
Same thing. If you go further out into the ocean, there might be huge, huge, as Donald Trump would say, the whole mid-Atlantic. There are all these little bumps out there in the acoustic signature there, which sure look like the synclines. It look like the
Salt domes.
the clathrates, frozen methane water combined things. It's like a rock, and it makes a good cap rock.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's tens of thousands of those traps for natural gas, we've got hundreds of years of natural gas.
Well, and there's quite a bit in the Arctic as well, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to move to in the next few decades to clean energy, mostly solar and
Well,
some
especially
nuclear.
as those technologies get to be less expensive all the time. Yeah, it totally makes
Elon
sense.
Musk said that we was talking about data center. He said that 99 of the data center is going to be in space and 99 of the energy production will be in space.
No. We have a place what's cool. How about Canada? You may have heard of the place. They have a lot of cold water there. Just drop your data center off on the edge, or at least the pipes. You can bring in water that's about the temperature of freezing. That's all you need to keep your data center doing just fine.
That and cold air temperature, yes.
Yeah, talk with Facebook. Maybe they will finance your
Well,
platform.
put me in touch with them. I've tried to make a few contacts, but haven't been successful yet.
There you go.
Yeah, so this has been a fun conversation. Well, fun. It's been enjoyable talking to each other. The topic isn't fun at all. But if the viewers enjoyed this, please give us a like and consider subscribing. And thank you for joining us today, Ron. Your input was very valuable and always a pleasure, Roger.
Yeah, likewise. Okay, and we'll, folks listening there, we'll hope that the things we're worried about don't happen and it comes out better. Meanwhile, people listening or watching, hope you learned something from it, and you can comment to us. It's free. Like and subscribe. And so long, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye bye.
Bye. Mhm.